The applause started small, uncertain at first, as if everyone was still trying to find their voice after being handed something too big to process immediately. But then it grew stronger, deeper, roaring not just from obligation but from the place inside where real gratitude, real recognition lives. Later that night, Jasmine stood on the sidewalk outside the hall. No security detail, no media swarm, just her, the night, and the echo of young voices still ringing faintly from behind. Across the street, a student spotted her and hurried over, sneakers scuffing the pavement, hands trembling slightly. "Thank you," the girl blurted out, voice breaking from nerves. Jasmine reached out, placing a warm hand on the girl's shoulder. No cameras, no audience, just a moment passed from one fighter to another. "Don't thank me," Jasmine said quietly. "Just keep standing." The ripples spread outward, not loud, not explosive, but steady. Steady in the way that mountains are steady. Steady in the way that revolutions, real ones, are born not from one great moment, but from 1,000 small ones stitched together by people who refuse to look away. Jasmine knew the battle wasn't over. She knew it might never be. But she also knew this. Some wars aren't won with shouts. They are won with steps, one after another, until the world finally learns to listen. And Jasmine Crockett had already taken the first one. The real lesson carved from this moment was not about winning arguments. It was about refusing to let the terms of humanity be rewritten by the loudest or the cruelest voice in the room. Jasmine had shown that the hardest victories are not explosive. They are endured. They are earned quietly, one breath at a time, by those who choose, against all odds, to remain standing when it would be easier, safer, even more profitable to sit down. She didn't shame her opponent with rage. She didn't outshout her. She outlasted her, with truth, with patience, with a courage too deep to be rattled by petty provocation. Because the greatest revolutions don't start with noise. They start with refusal. Refusal to shrink, refusal to apologize for existing, refusal to allow someone else's limited vision to define your worth. And the message Jasmine left behind was not just for those who looked like her or came from the same hard-fought places. It was for everyone, a reminder that belonging is not something you ask for. It is something you claim. It is something you live. And it is something you defend, not by proving yourself to those who doubt you, but by standing anyway when the ground shakes and the walls close in. You don't always need to shout to leave a scar on the walls of injustice. Sometimes you only need to stand, calm, steady, and unbreakable, and watch as the world cracks itself trying to move you. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. The weight of standing still. In the middle of a live congressional hearing, Karoline Leavitt looked Jasmine Crockett straight in the eye and shouted, "Go back to Africa." The entire room froze. The cameras rolled. America witnessed one woman unleash her fury while the other answered with history, with nothing but her voice and her truth. How could an insult meant to silence one woman end up shaking an entire nation to its core? The congressional hearing room in Washington, D.C. wasn't a room anymore. It was a trap, spring-loaded and ticking down. Cold lights bore down from the ceiling, flattening every line on every face into something harsh, exposed. Cameras crouched along the walls like mechanical predators, their lenses wide open, waiting for blood. A low murmur vibrated through the air, not conversation, just tension bleeding out of human skin. The heavy oak table stretched like a battlefield between two women who could not have stood for more different Americas. Jasmine Crockett sat at one end, her spine straight, her hands still, every inch of her screaming, "I am not here to apologize." Across from her, Karoline Leavitt adjusted her papers, sharp, jerky motions, her polished smile already cracking at the edges. Around them, aides moved stiffly, the scratch of pen on paper too loud, the shuffle of a chair unbearable. Jasmine wasn't here for herself alone. She was carrying the gravity of stories never told, verdicts never overturned, names never cleared. She could feel them behind her like a wall, ancestors in shackles, mothers in courtroom clutching crumpled subpoenas, boys shot for walking wrong on the wrong street. The chairman's gavel slammed down, a crack that sounded too much like a rifle shot, and the room jolted as if the floor had shifted. Jasmine inhaled once, slow and deep, steadying the roar in her blood. Karoline's hand tightened slightly on her pen, the movement small but unmistakable. The war had already started, and not a single word had been spoken yet. Jasmine Crockett leaned forward slightly, her voice cutting clean through the heavy silence like the first crack of thunder before a storm breaks. She wasn't reading. The facts were alive inside her, carved into years of cases she had fought. In majority black districts, she said, voice low but unwavering, sentences are on average 34% harsher compared to white districts, even when the crime is the same. No one interrupted. No one dared. In states like Louisiana and Mississippi, defendants of color are twice as likely to be wrongfully convicted compared to white defendants. Her voice never rose. It didn't need to. The weight of what she was saying pressed harder with every word, each syllable sinking deeper into the foundation of the hearing. Bias is not a ghost, she said. It has fingerprints, names, faces. Then, just when Jasmine opened her mouth to continue, the interruption came, hard, fast, and sharp enough to feel like a slap. Karoline Leavitt leaned forward, her voice cold, flat, weaponized. Maybe you should study your African roots before trying to teach Americans how our laws work. The room didn't just fall silent, it froze. It was a kind of silence that felt physical, heavy, like the air itself had been punched out of the room. For a moment, everything stopped. Heads turned, eyes widened. A camera zoomed in silently, catching every tightening jaw, every slow blink. Somewhere near the back, an older black staffer shifted in his seat, his hand gripping the armrest tight, knuckles whitening. The insult sat there, thick and sour, too real to be taken back, too loud to pretend not to hear. Jasmine didn't blink. She didn't lean back. She didn't lash out. She simply tilted her head slightly, a gesture so small yet so cutting it made the tension even heavier. "Would you mind repeating that?" she asked, each word measured, cool, deliberate. It wasn't a question born from confusion. It was a challenge, a dare laid out in front of everyone like a loaded weapon placed gently on the table. Karoline pushed herself up from her chair, the legs scraping loud and ugly against the polished floor. She lifted her chin and threw the words out into the room with all the brittle force of someone who had never been made to carry the weight of what she said. "If you think America is so unjust, then maybe you should go back to Africa." The sentence hit the room like a metal door slamming shut. The microphone caught everything. No static, no distortion, no chance for spin. The broadcast feed didn't blink. Across America, millions of people heard it in real time. Raw, naked, undeniable. Jasmine saw it all, the gasps, the smirks, the tightening hands, and she sat still, absorbing it, letting the truth of the moment settle into the bones of the room. Then Jasmine moved forward, each step heavy with meaning. She didn't rush. The silence itself seemed to lean toward her, hungry for what was about to come. Cameras followed her automatically, but no one needed a lens to tell them where the center of gravity had shifted. She stopped at the heart of the room, not behind a desk, not shielded by papers or protocol, just standing there, herself, alone, every inch of her rooted like a monument that would not move. She raised the microphone slowly, not for show, but with the patience of someone who knew that when the truth is ready, it does not need to shout. "I was born in Texas," she said, the words falling like the first heavy drops of a storm breaking a long drought. "My father wore an American military uniform. My mother wore a nurse's badge." Her voice didn't tremble. It carved its way forward, quiet but unstoppable. "And my ancestors," she paused long enough to force every head to lift, every eye to meet Hayes, "they wore iron shackles." She didn't say it like a plea. She didn't say it for pity. She said it like a fact, too big, too old, and too terrible to be anything but carried. They were chained, packed into ships like cargo, stolen across oceans, and forced to build the very foundation the country we now sit in. There was no sound but the faint hum of the cameras. "You tell me to go back to Africa." Her tone colder now, the edges sharpened by a history too often ignored. "My blood, my family's blood, is soaked into this soil deeper than any flag planted hereafter." She took one half step closer, not toward Karoline, but toward every hollow excuse hiding in the room. "I don't need to go anywhere. My family paid for this land with chains, with sweat, with bone, with lives. We built it. We bled for it. And I will not be told to leave it by someone who inherited it without ever having to fight for it." In that moment, Jasmine Crockett didn't just answer an insult. She dismantled it, piece by brutal piece, until there was nothing left for it to stand on. But Jasmine wasn't finished. Not yet. She reached for a thick black folder, the bold stamp across its cover, practically burning under the harsh lights. Confidential, Internal DO Compliance Report 2019. This report was prepared during the time Karoline Leavitt held a position at the Department of Justice. Jasmine said, voice low and exact, specifically during her assignment shaping communication strategies and internal policy messaging related to judicial outcomes. Jasmine lifted the first page slowly. According to this DOJ compliance report, African Americans received prison sentences 34% longer than white defendants convicted of identical crimes. She turned the page with deliberate care. Wrongful prosecutions occurred at double the rate in neighborhoods predominantly made up of black and Latino residents compared to predominantly white neighborhoods. She reached for another sheet. Internal communications reveal explicit acknowledgement that external political pressure pushed for intensified law enforcement action specifically within minority communities. Jasmine closed the folder softly, the finality of the gesture louder than any gavel strike. You tell me I should leave, Jasmine said, her voice calm but slicing through the air like a knife through taut rope. Maybe you should spend more time reading about the crimes you helped cover up. Karoline sat paralyzed in her chair, her body rigid, her hands clutching the armrest so tightly the veins along her wrists stood out. Her practiced smile had completely collapsed, leaving only a blank mask struggling to contain the turmoil inside. The clip hit the internet like a spark dropped onto dry grass. No warning, no time to contain it. Within minutes, Twitter feed exploded, hashtag piling up faster than anyone could scroll. On TikTok, the footage looped over and over. Jasmine's calm, lethal words cutting through the noise, Karoline's silence bleeding out across millions of screens. In a small diner outside of Birmingham, Alabama, an elderly black man watched the clip on a cracked phone propped up against a ketchup bottle. His hand shook slightly as he pressed replay, again, not because he had missed anything, but because he needed to feel it one more time, the weight of dignity standing unbroken under fire. At a public library in Detroit, a group of college students huddled around a laptop, their midterms forgotten, their argument about theory replaced with the shared electricity of seeing someone speak a truth they had been taught to survive but never to say out loud. In a small living room in Des Moines, Iowa, under the dim light of an old ceiling fan, a white man named Tom Reynolds sat beside his teenage son, the glow of the television screen flickering across their faces. Tom hadn't planned to watch the hearing. He had stumbled across the clip by accident, scrolling through sports highlights, his thumb hesitating when he saw Jasmine Crockett's name trending. Tom's hands, callous from years working construction, tightened into fists against his jeans as Jasmine spoke about her ancestors, about iron shackles, about blood paid for a country that still asked her to leave. His son, 15 and gangly and too often sarcastic, didn't make a joke. He didn't shift restlessly. He just sat there, his face pale, his eyes wide, watching. When Jasmine said, I don't need to go anywhere, Tom felt his throat close up tight, too tight to swallow. His son reached over without a word and gripped his father's hand. Tom squeezed back hard, and for the first time in a long time, neither of them pretended not to understand the weight they had just witnessed. Tears blurred Tom's vision, hot and shameful and cleansing all at once, and when he glanced sideways, he saw tears streaming silently down his son's face too. They didn't speak. They didn't have to. That moment said everything they hadn't known how to say until now. Thousands of miles away, in a sun-bleached front porch chair in Selma, Alabama, Miss Loretta Jennings, a woman who had marched for voting rights in the 60s, who had seen too many speeches and too few changes, sat with an old tablet balanced carefully on her lap. She watched Jasmine speak, not yelling, not begging, not performing, just standing there with that steady fire burning low and deadly in her chest. Miss Loretta leaned back, the wood of her chair creaking softly under her weight. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She simply nodded, slow and deep, the way old trees bend in the wind but never break. With a slow, deliberate motion, she opened her Facebook page and typed, Not everyone need to shout. Sometimes one steady look is enough. The word spread quietly but fiercely, shared by church groups, college students, retired civil rights lawyers, young activists who had never heard of her before but who knew wisdom when they saw it. Sometimes one steady look is enough, became a rallying cry of its own, not shouted from podium but murmured across dinner tables, whispered in classrooms, typed in comment sections beneath Jasmine's video. In less than 48 hours, Jasmine Crockett's steady stand had become something far more dangerous than a viral moment. It had become a mirror, and people all across the country were being forced to look into it. While Karoline Leavitt sat alone in the empty hearing chamber, confronting the hollow echo of her own words, Jasmine Crockett was stepping into a different kind of spotlight, a modest hall where young scholarship recipients gathered, clutching certificates, resumes, and dreams stitched together from long nights of study. Jasmine took her place behind the plain wooden podium. When she spoke, her voice moved differently, heavy, steady, deliberate, the way mountains move when they shift deep underground. "I want to tell you something tonight," Jasmine began. "I don't need an apology. I need a shift in thinking." The students stared at her like she was speaking directly into the oldest, hardest parts of themselves, the parts that had survived rejection, survived being overlooked, survived being told in 100 small ways that they were too much and not enough all at once. "You will be tested," she said, her voice roughening at the edges now. "Not once, not twice, over and over. You will be told to wait, to be quiet, to be grateful for crumbs. You will be told your anger is the problem. You will be told your hope is naive. You will be told your presence is disruptive." A boy in the back row, no older than 17, blinked rapidly, his shoulders set hard against an invisible weight Jasmine knew too well. "But don't let them steal your steadiness. Don't let them shame your endurance. Sometimes you will win not because you shouted the loudest, but because you refused to move when they told you that you didn't belong.